Hey guys, and welcome to another Blender Cookie tutorial. My name is Greg Zaal, and today I'm going to show you some more advanced texturing methods, I suppose you could call them. Now this is actually the first part of a sort of mini-series where I'm going to show you how to do some compositing CG into live footage. I don't know what the proper name for that whole process is, but I call it VFX, visual effects. So yeah, if you hear me say that, that's what I mean. So, basically in this part, I'm going to show you all the texturing that I do. Well, that doesn't make much sense. We're going to be making a safe, first modeling the safe, and then texturing it properly. But before we do any of that stuff, we're going to set up the lighting. Now, as you can see in this footage here, we're going to be, if I just hide everything, there, you'll see in this footage, we're going to have our sort of platform over here with some doors, like a trapdoor kind of thing, and the door's going to open and a safe is going to come out, and then the safe will open up and you'll see Suzanne on the inside. So basically the first thing that we have to do is, if we're going to be, which we are, compositing the safe and everything into this footage here, we're going to have to match the lighting. And how we're going to do that is by two little things. The first one is going to be matching the lighting of the scene. Like, I know there's a big fluorescent lamp above the camera somewhere, and we're going to be adding that in as an emitting plane. And secondly, we're going to be using an HDR image that we make ourselves. It's very, very easy to make an HDR image, and it's kind of the right season to do so, as you'll see in a few minutes. So yeah, the first thing we want to do is, make that HDR image. So I'm going to use a program called HDR Shop. I'm pretty sure this is the only one that can do it. It's a very small program. It's like a couple kilobytes. It's just an exe file, and it lets you make HDR images. And basically, if I open my file here, here we go, you'll see, let me delete that, you'll see I have taken 3 photos of a Christmas ball, and it's actually a golden Christmas ball, but I've cropped the photo so it's, touching the sides properly, and I have adjusted the color. I think I adjusted the color, I hope I did, so that it's not so golden. Anyway, maybe I didn't. It doesn't really matter because the lighting is very golden anyway. So, the first thing we're going to do, I already said that, is go into this HDR Shop program and click Create and Assemble HDR from Image Sequence. So basically the idea behind this is you take 3 photos, or any number actually, of a mirror ball at different exposures. And you can see I've done a low exposure, higher, and highest. And these two aren't very different, but it doesn't matter because HDR Shop will calculate all the differences for us. So we just got to load in these images, all 3 of them here, open them, and then what we have to do is change the gamma of the images, and I'm just going to change it to 0.5, and that should be okay. We'll adjust the contrast and everything later in Blender so that it's, lighting properly. And then I'm just going to click Calculate, so it calculates all the overlapping colors and brightness and stuff. So then we just hit Generate Image, and now we have an HDR. I'm not quite sure how to, there we go, zoom out in this program, but, anyway, I just did. So now what we've got to do is convert this into something that Blender can use. It's already an HDR image, and basically all HDR is a format of an image that can hold more brightness and darkness values so that it's better for lighting and everything. So now to convert it to something Blender can use, we go to Image, Panorama, Panoramic Transformations, and then down here we make sure it's mirrored ball, and over here we say Light Probe Angular Map. We just hit OK, and now it kind of crops it for us, as you can see. and makes it a perfect circle. So then if we go to image, panorama, panoramic transformations, and then go to light probe angular map and change it to latitude and longitude, you'll see that we get this sort of rectangular image here. And basically this is something that Blender can use. So we just got to save this, and I'm going to save it as, I don't know, what do I save it as? Lat long for latitude longitude .hdr, and make sure you save it as a .hdr and not something else. So I'm just going to close this now and go back to Blender. Okay, I'm going to unhide everything here. Now in this tutorial, let me delete that quickly. We'll add that in later, because this is just the first part of the whole tutorial series, and the second part we're doing all the compositing, and that was to do with reflections. Anyway, back to what I was saying. What was I saying? I have no idea. Oh yes, so we're going to be texturing or modeling and texturing the safe, and the method that we use to do that is exactly the same as I used to model and texture this. So I'm not going to bother showing you how to texture this. It's just gonna be pre-textured, as you can see now. It's the same method, and we'll get pretty similar results. Anyway, moving on, we now have to select an environment texture, not an image texture, as our environment thingy here. Make sure it says background, and environment texture, open, and open our HDR file. And there we go. We just got a map to generated, although default is generated, I think. And yeah, so now we need to match up the HDR map to the lighting of the scene and from the camera angle and everything. So I know for a fact, because I made this footage, that my fridge is somewhere in this direction here, and me busy taking the photo, if you might have seen, is somewhere in this direction. So I'm just going to put the 3D cursor there, and there, that direction, I think it was. Yes, that's about right. Doesn't really matter. So that direction over there is where I'm standing. Technically, you can take a photo of the mirror ball from two angles, like the front angle and the side angle, and then use GIMP to sort of composite yourself out. But it's not necessary, especially because we're not using any sort of highly reflective objects. We're just using it as a sort of light source. So, I hope that makes sense. It doesn't really matter if you can see me in the environment texture. Anyway, moving on. Yes, we need to rotate it. So, in order to change the UV map, or not UV, the texture map, is to add a mapping node, vector mapping, and drop it over there. So now you can see in this node you can change the scale and the rotation and location and everything like that. Scale actually doesn't do much for the environment texture, but it's very, very useful, and we're going to use it later for the rest of the texturing. So let's just go into rendered view, and if I know that I'm supposed to be in that direction, but actually there's my fridge and that's me over there, so we need to rotate either our whole scene or just the environment texture. So we'll just rotate the environment texture, and I think it's going to be, yep, 90 degrees. There we go. So now in that direction is me. Okay. And yeah, so the next step, as you can see, the lighting is not bad for the scene, but it's not perfect. It's probably never going to be perfect, but in order to get it better, yeah, we need to adjust the contrast first. Contrast. I'm weird. And let me just get rid of that. And yes, we'll move this out the way like that. And so what we have to do is add a math node and change this to power. And what I found out is that we can sort of adjust the contrast of the image by using this power node. And if I just change this to something like 2.5, that should be okay. You'll notice it's all black and white now because this is, values and not an actual image input. But that's okay, we'll sort that out just now. So now you can see that the main light sources are solid white, or mostly solid white, and everywhere else is just a little bit dark or grey and stuff like that. So that'll just help with our environment lighting and not light something too much unnecessarily, if you know what I mean. So there we go. And now to get the color back in, all we gotta do is add a color node and change it to color, and then put our original image at the bottom and the black and white one at the top, and then just change this to 1. So that's done about the right thing. Now it's very strange colors and sort of green and everything, but that's pretty much how it is. Anyway, I think the strength of 5 or 6 almost is a bit much, so I'm going to change it to 3, because this isn't the only light source we're using. And as you can see, my computer is very slow and GPU isn't working properly, and if it did, it would be even slower. So, moving on. Yeah. So now what you want to do is, if we just look at this rendered thing again, you can see I have that fluorescent light up there, which is like a double light thingy. And what we're going to do, why do I keep saying that, is put an emitting plane up there. So I'm just going to add a plane like that, and just move it up a lot, roughly about the height that I know it should be, because this is my kitchen. And there we go. I'm just going to put the viewport somewhere like, cursed. Why did I do that? I'm not even sure. There we go. I'm just going to put the center of the viewport somewhere here, and then just move it up a little bit and zoom all the way in, just so that our view from the camera is roughly the same as what the view from the platform will be, and that'll let us line up the lighting pretty nicely. So I hope that makes sense. I'm going to take this plane and go into rendered view and just move it roughly in the right place like that, and then scale it along the y-axis like that, and then just change it into a emitting texture like that and make it 3. There we go. That should be about right for the lighting. One of the most important things in compositing CG into footage is the lighting. I mean, yeah, shadows and a solid track are important, but in my opinion, the most important thing is that the lighting matches. And right now, it's not bad, but I think I want to increase this to maybe 5. That should be okay. And yeah, okay. So, next thing is to model the safe. And we're 13 minutes into the tutorial, so I should probably speed up a little bit. We've got quite a lot to do. So, I mean, the main focus of this tutorial is not the modeling, it's the texturing. I hope you already know how to model, mostly. Otherwise, you can watch some of Blend Cookie's other tutorials. So, right now, I just moved that up 1 Blender unit in edit mode, so the origin is down there, so I can just scale it down. And that should be okay. Let me just check that it's not going through the floor like that. That should be fine. Okay, so now in edit mode, I'm just going to scale this to get the rough shape of the safe. And yeah, that's okay. So now, what I'm going to do is add a subsurf on level 3. Okay, and just make sure it's on level 3 there. And I press Control 3 to do that, by the way. Nice hotkey. And then add some edge loops, just 2, and scale them along the y-axis like that. And 2 more here. Like I said, I'm going to rush through this a bit because that's not the focus of this tutorial. Anyway. And if you looked at the reference image of the safe, you'll see that the top part is quite sharp, and all the other edges are, not so sharp. Okay, and that's about right, I hope. Then, let's just do the door. So I'll add another 2 edge loops there, and some more here. Very kind of boring stuff, you know. Should be fine. Yep. Okay. Now just extrude this all the way into the back of the safe like that. And just add some more edge loops to make it sharp. And I know there's a lot of different ways, or actually like 3, to make sharp edges with subsurf on, like the edge split modifier and all these things. But the creases, I mean, they're not accurate, if you know what I mean. They're, you know, artificial. And if you look at things in real life, nothing is perfectly sharp. So what I use most of the time is really high poly objects, and just, you know, make even the slightly noticeable sort of softer, not so perfectly sharp edge will add a little bit more realism to your render. So I think that's everything. That was pretty quick, I think. Anyway, now for the door, I'm just going to press or select one of these edge loops and say cursor to selected. And I'm not quite sure that's sharp enough, so I'm going to add another edge loop there. That's better. Anyway, cursor to selected and add a plane. Rotate along the x-axis 90 degrees. And just scale it down. Okay. Like I said, I'm rushing through this. You don't need to keep up. Well, maybe you do. I'm not quite sure if people actually follow tutorials these days, like actually follow along as you're watching. I never used to do that. Or maybe once or twice. I don't really see the point anymore. So, I mean, how I think people watch tutorials is that they sort of watch it in their spare time and take note of a few things, and then, you know, just remember it. You don't actually need to follow along. I guess it all depends on what your experiences are and how good you are so far. Anyway, so that is the door. And now, to see only the door, because you can't really see it properly, I'm going to press Ctrl L to select all the linked objects, and press Shift H to hide everything but the selection. And if you go into wireframe mode, you can still see the wireframe there, but that's because of the subsurf. And while I'm here, I'll just turn on optimal display, so we don't get, you know, messed up by all the wires stuff. Anyway, I think I need some more coffee. So that is the door basically done. Now we just need to do the hinges. So what I'm going to do is unhide everything. I really need to stop saying that. Sorry if I irritate you. I know I've irritated a few people before with different stuff. But anyway. So I'm just making the hinges like this. Hope that makes sense to you. Yeah. There we go. And then I'm just going to select everything here and extrude it down like that much. And select this face over here and extrude along the y-axis a little bit, and then extrude it again, so we have like a very, very sharp face here. And it's not quite touching. There we go. Okay. And then obviously we need to do this. There we go. And then I'm just going to select this face over here and duplicate it, extrude it down about the same size, like that's okay. And then select that face and do that very same thing by extruding it twice along the y-axis to get a very sharp edge. And that should be okay. That's a very, very big hinge, but I guess they are. I'm actually going to make it a bit smaller. And I'm going to press the full stop key on the keyboard to set the pivot point to the 3D cursor. And I'll just scale it down a little bit like that. Okay, and then move it down, and to set the pivot point back to the bounding box center, you just hit the comma. Right. What is that? I think I accidentally extruded that. That's weird. I don't remember doing that. Seems fine. So, like I said, duplicate it down and about there. Okay, and now for the dial, I'll just quickly model that. I'm taking up too much time doing this. I'm going to add a cylinder, and because we have 3 levels of subsurf, I'm just going to set it to 8 vertices and take off cap ends. Rotate along the x-axis, scale it down, and that's okay. Maybe a little big. Anyway, yeah, that's very big. There we go. And yeah, we'll just move it outside a little bit. Okay. And then I'm just going to close it off the side by pressing Control L, Shift H, so we actually can see what we're doing. Can extrude it, scale it down a bit, extrude it, and merge it at center. That's okay. And then I can unhide everything again. Let's move this back here, and now quickly model it like that. I hope you don't get bored. You can fast forward through this if you like. Unfortunately, I can't. Not really, anyways. I didn't say that. So, there we go. Just doing some basic modeling. And like I said earlier, if you don't know how to model, watch some other tutorials that are focused on modeling. But how I see it, the best way to learn something is just to practice it and figure it out yourself. I mean, that's how I did it. I didn't watch many tutorials. And in fact, my first few months of learning Blender, I didn't even have the internet. So, how's that for you? Okay. That should be fine, right? Yeah, okay. And then there's just the handle left. Maybe that's a bit small. I don't know. I could spend days on this. Doesn't really matter. So the handle, yes. I'm just gonna take one of these edge loops and duplicate it, scale it down, and this is gonna be that little piece that connects the handle to the door. It's not the actual thing you hold on to. Anyway, that should be fine. And now I'm going to move the cursor here and add a cube. That's what I want, a cube. And the first thing I want to do is scale it along the y-axis so it's not so thick. And then take that face and extrude it up. Rotate a bit. And then I can take that face and do the same, except the other direction. There we go. And then I'm going to add 2 edge loops here to get it a little more flat. And add one down there, one up here. What is going on? There we go. And one down there. And that's that. I think there's enough space for your fingers, and no there's not. So I'm just gonna select that, and that, but not that. Yeah, just move it out a bit. There you go, space for fingers. So, that is the modeling done. That took forever, I am sorry. Now, we're going to texture it. So, now that's what I wanted to do. Basically, there's 3 materials on this safe. There's one for the metal, which is basically everything, and then one for the dial, and one for the handle. So, before we even separate this into different materials, we're going to want to paint our dirt mask and our scratch mask, because it's a lot easier to paint it when they're all together than when they're all separate, if that makes sense. Okay, So we're just going to add a material, and for now we'll call this safe underscore metal. And then if we just switch to here, we're first of all, before we do anything, is obviously smooth shade it and check the normals. So I'm going to hit Control N to make sure all the normals are looking the right way, and then I'm actually going to check them manually by turning on face normals. Where are they? Oh, there we go. Under Mesh Display, Face Normals. Basically, this is just the direction that the faces are facing. That sounds kind of cool. And you can't paint on something if they're not facing the way you want. So you just got to make sure they're all facing outside. There we go. Okay. Now, what you have to do before you paint anything, let me just get rid of that, we're not doing any animation, is unwrap it. So I'm just going to select everything, hit U and Smart UV Project, and then just hit OK. And that's the lazy way of doing it, but it's quick and it seems to work pretty well for this kind of shape. So, as you can see, we have a few problems. You can't paint on something if it's not in the UV space, so that area is going to be a problem. So, I'm just going to select everything and UVs, pack islands. And I think there's nothing else we can do here. I was hoping we could set a margin, but I don't know how to do that from here. Yeah, it's not the end of the world, I hope. The only thing you'll notice is that when we're painting, we'll get a bit of overlapping painting, but that's okay, it just makes it look more dirty. So, now that we've packed the islands, we can start painting. So, first of all, we need to make a new image. So I'm going to call this M for mask, underscore D for dirt, underscore, actually let me say M underscore safe, and then D for dirt, and then just put a T on the end for tutorial, because I've painted this before. And we just got to make it white. As you can see, I'm in hue saturation value, and I'm adjusting the values to 1, or you can just do it there, whatever. Save it. Now, an important thing you have to do is save it to somewhere on your hard drive. You can't just not save a physical copy. So, I'm going to save as, go find my folder, textures, and as you can see, I've already got them painted here, but these are MD safe, and the ones here is M safe D. It doesn't make much sense, but hopefully it does. M safe D. It's just because I've painted those already, and yeah. We'll delete them later. In fact, we can delete them now. Save image. Let me go find it quickly, just so that we don't get confused. Safe D, safety T, safe there. These textures, MD platform and door, and there, those ones are. That's weird. No, we want that one actually. Those are for the other stuff like the platform and the doors and elevator and stuff like that. So I want to delete them like that. There we go. That's fine. Moving on. What am I doing? Yes, painting. So in order to paint something in cycles right now, I'm not sure if they'll fix it in the future, but we actually have to be using this texture in our nodes somewhere. So we're going to change this all later, but for now, we can just go M safe D. There we go. So now it's in there, and we just set it to UV, and that's all fun. Great. Now we can start painting. So if we change this to textured quickly, you can see that if I paint something here, it appears over there, and that's exactly what we want. So I'm just going to get my tablet here and go into orthographic view because it seems to work better. Yeah, you'll find out someday. There's like a sort of clipping issue or something if you're in perspective mode and you're painting, but that's not really important. Now I'm using a tablet, so I'm going to have the strength really low and make sure airbrush is enabled and pressure sensitivity is checked. So now I can start painting. First of all, I'm going to paint a fairly dark bit here, And basically this is our dirt mask, so all the black parts are going to be dirty. And as you should know, dirt accumulates in all the cracks and creases and things like that. So, yeah. Now I'll come back to the hinges just now. Those also need some dirt. Anyway, and also it's useful to have this curve selected when we're painting, specifically masks, dirt masks and things. It just is, believe me. So, let's paint a little bit more, and I'll go back and do a sort of broader, less strong paint just now. Anyway, I'm not the world's best texturer, but I've learnt a few things while painting with a project I did a few weeks ago. It was sort of like a spaceship, and I painted, I think it was 42 different masks, all hand painted and everything. It took very long, so I learnt a few things. And that's the best way to learn, like I said, just do it yourself. Anyway, as you can see, like I was talking about, we're going to get a little bit of bleeding, or what do you call it, seeping, sort of painting where we don't expect it to, because the UVs are too close to each other. So if you know how to make a margin between the islands, then please tell me in the comments below. I don't know everything, and please don't assume that I do. So I'm just painting my life away. And this is kind of boring for you, I suppose. We'll get to the interesting part later. All the nodes and masks and textures and stuff like that. It's very fun. Anyway, this is kind of boring. You should put some music on or something while I'm doing this. So, like I said, I'll go back and make a little bit, bigger part here, and all the dirt that accumulates in the cracks and everything will be there. But now, you can see we're pretty much finished with all the cracks, except for the bottom bit, which we'll get to. So, what we want to do... gotta stop stealing. Got to stop, keep saying that. Please ignore me. Is paint some dirt on the sides, because when this thing has been moved around, which it probably isn't, when it's rubbing against stuff, this part isn't going to touch very much. So if we just make our strength really, really, really low, we can sort of paint the middle here. This isn't working very well. And now my brush is just on naught. Anyway, so yeah, these middle parts will also get a little bit dirty, just because nothing's touching them, and it'll just accumulate and not get rubbed off on anything. So I hope that makes sense. It's kind of hard to paint here because I don't have enough RAM or something. I need a new computer. I guess that's what everybody says. Wouldn't it be nice if you just had the best? Okay. Maybe a little bit on the front here. Okay, not that much. Okay. A little bit around there. And down there. That's fine. And like I said, just at the bottom where it's been in contact with the lift or platform, whatever it is, for a long period of time, the dirt will, get there. As you can see, there's a line there, and you can't paint any further than that, and that's the problem with painting in perspective mode. You get that sort of clipping issue. I don't know what it is, and if any developer is watching this, which is quite unlikely, please do something about it. Okay, almost done. You can wake up now. Okay, so that's basically our dirt mask painted. Now, remember to save it again. That's right. And now we're going to paint the scratch mask, which is also pretty cool. Not. So I'm just going to duplicate that node and change it. Well, we first got to make the new image. It's going to be msafe s for scratches. And this one is going to be, well, we'll leave it white for now, but it is going to be black later. Or maybe not. It doesn't actually matter, to be honest. It's just a mask. So, create it and save it somewhere. msafe s. There we go. And this is going to be msafe s. There we go. Okay. So now let's just check this works. I'll paint something here. If it lets me. Yes, it works. Okay. So now for the scratch mask. This one is where it's had contact with things and the paint or the metal has started rubbing off. So you can use a much stronger brush and also a harsher brush, like not so soft. Anyway, that doesn't make much sense. And this one we're not just going to be painting sort of blurry black areas. This one we're actually going to be doing a little bit more painting work. By that I mean by actually painting stuff. I don't make any sense today. And I can't speak properly either. That's still a little bit strong. So this is basically just all the parts that have been scratched. And that's all I have to say about this. You can go back to sleep while I do some painting. Okay, so now that I've painted that, I didn't paint on this knob or anything because that's not even going to use the scratch mask at all. So, now to start with the fun part, and that is all the crazy nodes and everything. Why did I just move the window? That was stupid. Anyway, that's okay, right? Yeah, okay. So remember to save this somewhere on your hard drive. There we go. So now if we just click on these nodes, it should change. There we go. You can see it in the viewport. Our different masks. Okay. So, to start off, let's just separate all of this stuff. I'm going to make a new material, call it safe underscore, what is that thing called? A dial, and safe handle. So, before we get into using any of our painted textures, I'm going to do the handle material, just to show you some basics of Cycles materials. Hopefully not too basic. First of all, I'll separate that. No, I don't need to separate it. Why do I need to separate that? Anyway, now there's two of them. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to assign the dial to there, and select that, and then the handle I'm going to assign there. Okay, so on this handle material, what we're going to have is just basically a diffuse shader mixed with a glossy shader. So in the nodes, I'm going to, let me just move this down a bit. There we go. I'm going to add a new shader and glossy. So if you know anything about materials and cycles, well, hopefully you do. This isn't really a basics tutorial, there's plenty of those, so I'm going to skip that. Let's add a mix shader. So a mix shader is a lot more simple than you think. It's mixing these two together. it's the same as any other mix node. A value of 0 will mean the top one is, the bottom one is not mixed with the top one at all. So all you'll see is the diffuse shader. If you have 1, then you'll only see the glossy shader, because that's mixed. All of that is mixed completely and overrides this one. If you have 0.5, then these two will be equally shown. But we kinda want it on 0.9-ish, because the handle is mostly glossy, but it's got a little bit of a diffuse to it, out of age, and it's not perfectly glossy and clean. So I'm going to put it on something like 0.9 or 0.8 even, and they're both white. That's fine. We're going to put the roughness on 0.1, and hopefully you know that roughness is like how what did Blender Internal call it? I think it just called it gloss. Basically, a roughness of 0 will mean it's perfectly reflective, as if it's like a mirror you're looking into. 0.1 is like a little more blurry, 0.2 is more blurry, and higher than that you hardly ever use. At least I don't. That's okay. So if we do a test render, that should be right. It's just sort of a little bit diffused and mostly reflective. I think that's fine. Yeah. Whatever. It's not the end of the world. 0.7 maybe? Whatever. I think it's fine. Now, the next thing we're going to do is the dial. So here we're going to need to use multiple UV maps. Basically, our first UV map is, if I get this back, is all of this here. And this, we're just going to leave it, or we're going to call it UV, just because it's simple and it's our main UV map. Now we're going to make a new UV map, and I'm going to call this projected, because what this is I'm going to select, well, actually just this, and hit in the front view and make sure it's orthographic. I'm going to say U and project from view bounds. So that's just going to put it all the way there. And what I did is I made a texture that's, well, you'll see now. It is, if I'm in safe dial material, I'm going to select an image, and it is going to be, where's this one? There we go, dial. And you can see here, if I open that dial texture, it's made on Mars. I made this just using an array modifier and a curve modifier and some simple stuff like that. And that's going to be the dial and the markings and everything on the dial. So now we just need to adjust the UV so it all lines up properly. And what I'm going to do is select this outer edge loop here and hit O to enable that projection proportional edit, and just scale it down a little bit like that. I think that's okay. Then I can select everything and scale it up a little bit more. I don't think that was enough. Is that better? I can't really see. Let's just do a little test. Now instead of selecting UV as our vector, we're going to select attribute and change this to projected. Okay. And yeah, so if you put the name of the UV map there, it's going to use that UV map as the UV map. Makes sense, right? So I'm just going to go into Reddit and see if it's mapped properly. And it hasn't. Although that is pretty cool, actually. I kind of like that. I think we can leave it. We could actually just go into textured view. That should work too. Yep. Yeah. I like that. Not what I was trying to do, but it's cool anyway. So, that's that. Just for that. That doesn't make any sense. So, now, to get to the real texturing part, I'm going to add in another image texture, and this one is going to be something completely different, and it is here, and I think it's concrete bear. Yeah, I think that's right. And if I duplicate this attribute node and just change it to UV, connect that in there, and then just connect this down there, we'll mix it all together lately. We're just going to check that our mapping and the size of everything we're doing is right, which it probably isn't. We'll just change it just now. Come on, render. Actually, I don't need to render, I can use textured view. Thank you. And is that working? There we go. Yeah, you gotta select it there. And I'm basically just going to add a mapping node and do that scale thing I said is very useful. And I'm going to scale it by 5, actually by 10. Now you can't see the results in the viewport, so we're going to have to render it. Hey, come on, come on, come on. Okay. That's better. Even if it's not perfect, it's better. And what we want to do, and I said it again, is make this darker. So I'm just going to add a mix node, change that bottom one to black, and just mix it a little bit in like that. Is that dark enough for you? I think it is. Okay. Then we need to mix our dial markings back in. So I'm going to add another mix node, change it to add, because we just want to add the white colors, the markings, and add it in there. And that is pretty cool. Then we're going to add in our dirt mask. And it's pretty simple actually. I'm just going to use some more mix nodes and texture nodes and things like that. I'm going to say add a image texture, connect up the UV, the right one, open up our, where did we paint it, msafed, there it is, and then just add another mix node, change it to, actually no, we're not doing that, we're going to add another texture, because we're going to use the dirt mask as a mask and not, you'll see. So I'm just going to open it and find the right texture, which is this one, another thing from CG Textures, except this time I opened it in GIMP and tiled it myself, or made it seamless, and this time we're going to connect it, this is getting pretty messy, connect the mapping node there, and I hope you can see if it's not too small, and add another diffuse shader. No, not a diffuse shader, mix node, there we go, put it there, and now I'm just going to take this and plug it into, I think it's the bottom one, and then take my mask and plug it into the FAC value, and nope, it's the wrong way around, we just got to swap these, there we go. Okay, so now you can see that this texture, this texture, the darker one is used as all the parts that are white in the mask, and then the rusted part is all the parts that are black in the mask. And I just want to make this a little bit darker, so I'm going to do the same thing here, is make that darker, but then also change it and do a little bit of soft light, and that kind of adjusts the contrast a bit. If I change this to black, I think you have to, yeah. Okay, so that's a little bit more rusty, and you can see it around the edge there. Okay, so that is that bit done, and you can sort of see the basis of the workflow in texturing this. Now for the metal. Now this one is a little more complicated, but it's the same kind of style. So I've just got to go and select Safe Metal, and let's get started. If I can close that up, hopefully you can see better. So, this is our scratch mask, so let me actually label that as MS for scratch, and this one is our dirt mask, so I'll label it as MD. And that just changes the name up there and helps us see better, because you can't see the full file name. Okay, so I'm going to add another image texture, and I'm not even quite sure what to do here. But don't worry, we'll figure it out. It is another one of here, the scratched metal thing. I think it is. I hope it is. We'll find out. And this is basically going to be, oh, first of all, because we've got these two UV layers, instead of using this UV here, because this is just whatever one is selected, as you can see, but it's actually the same thing. So I'm just going to delete this and add in a vector, no, what is it? I think it's input. Yes, input attribute. There we go. And just make it UV and connect all of this up there. I'm getting a little bit worried about constantly rendering this, so I'm just going to save the file. It's for myself. You citizens won't find that in there, but that's just for me, so that in case I crash or something. Yes, so back to rendering. So this is our sort of metal texture. If we connect that up there, you'll see that it's okay. Perhaps we can just scale it up a bit by adding another mapping node. Drop that on there. I'm going to make it, say, 3. If you don't know, you can hover the mouse over there and press Ctrl C, and then hover the mouse there and press Ctrl V. That works pretty well. And I hope that is big enough. I don't think it is. So let's just make it 6. Whoops. There and there. This is 0, I think. Okay. And if you can start to notice that it's like tiling in places, which I'm not sure we can. Let me bump it up to 10. Okay. Then sort of to hide the fact that it's starting to tile, you can rotate it a bit on the Z-axis by 30 degrees, and that helps hide it, just so you don't see like straight lines of repeating textures. It's more at an angle. It looks better, although maybe we can just reduce this back to 6. I don't know. Anyway, so now that we have that base metal texture there, we can well, that's just the diffuse, actually. Now we want to start mixing in a gloss shader, because this is metal. It's not like a matte color. It's slightly shiny. So I'm going to add a shader, Glossy, put it on 0.1 again, connect that there, and we can look at it here if you like. So that's like really, really shiny. In fact, it's very, very, very shiny. Why is it so shiny? Yeah, it's fine. So I'll put that on 0.2, doesn't really matter. Now I'm going to add a mix shader and connect it like that, and then just find another image texture that we can use as a mask. Just plug that in there again, and this is just going to be like a random metal texture. I think it's tileable. I made it tileable, and then we'll just plug that straight into there. And if it looks like too glossy or not, you can try swapping them around and see what it does. And I think that's pretty good. So now that is the base of the metal texture done. What I want to do is now the dirt mask. Okay, so this is a really dirty old safe. You can see it already, but now we're just going to add some more dirt to it. And we'll do that in the very same way as we did the last one, by adding some more image textures. This one is going to be that very same rust texture over there. I'm not even sure I used that previously. We can use it now, I guess. Doesn't really matter. And I'll just plug that in there. Oh yes, I did use it. That was for the scratches. So let me change that. There we go, the rust texture. And this one is going to be diffuse shader. And only diffuse because rust isn't very shiny. And we're going to have another mix shader over there. And you can see that these textures are kind of starting to get pretty complicated with these materials. So, you know, it's very disorientating at the end. You have you just look at this mess of nodes and you have no idea what's going on. But just follow it and it starts to make sense. Yes, we need to do the mapping properly. No, we've done that. What's wrong? It's the wrong texture. There we go. Dial. It's not dial. There we go. It's M safe D. Okay. And that's right. And once again, I just want to make this a little bit darker. So I'm just going to add a mix node. It's going to be multiply. Doesn't really matter. It could be mix. Put it on black. And put another one before it and change the type to soft light, and that'll just make it a little bit more saturation, contrast, and things like that. And that's okay, I hope. Yeah, okay, now for the scratches, what we're going to do is, yet again, another mix shader, and another set of these. So, it's just going to be an image texture. We'll open, and like I said, this one. And we'll connect it over there. Whoa. I didn't mean to do that. Just fix that quickly. There we go. Okay. And that is the scratches. I'm just going to add a glossy shader. Connect it in there quickly to preview it. Connect the color. Put on 0.1. Let's make it extra shiny. No, 0.2 is fine actually. 0.1, 0.2, 0.1, whatever. That's okay. That's very, very, very shiny, which is fine. I think that's what we want. Okay. I'm forgetting what I'm doing. Yeah, okay. And then we add another mix shader. This is over an hour now. It's a pretty long tutorial. And we mix that one in like that, I think it is. And then use our scratch mask as the mask. And I think that works. Yep. And that's very, 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 very shiny. Which is what we want, of course. And this looks nothing like the original render that I did a few days ago. But it never does turn out the same, does it? So that done. One thing I forgot is the bump maps, or normal maps. Well, they're not normal maps, they're actually bump maps. They're very simple, so it won't take me long to show you it all. Basically, we just gotta plug something into this displacement thingy over here. So, really, we can just take any sort of image texture and plug it into a mix node so that we can control the effect or how strong it is. So I'm just going to take, what's this one? Yeah, whatever that is, I think it's fine. Yeah, plug it into the bottom part and then plug that into the displacement. And then you can put this on something like 0.05 or 0.03 or anything really, it depends what it is. And you can do that on all of them or none of them. Really, you won't see so much difference because later on we're going to soften the, when we're compositing it, we're going to soften the render, so you won't see the bump map very well. But, I might as well show you. So that's everything, I think. that's this part of the tutorial done. And the next part, which will be in a few days, possibly longer than a few days, because I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks, pretty much as soon as this is released, maybe before, I'm not sure. And the next part will be compositing this into our footage, and it'll turn out pretty cool, I hope. We'll find out, I guess. So yeah, one more thing before I stop recording is just for animation's sake. If I get that back up there, split this down again, make it a timeline. You'll see that I've already animated this so that the lift comes up as the door opens. So what I just want to do is, on a frame about over here, I'll select the safe and just parent it to the platform, so Control P to parent, so that it'll go down at the same time like that. Okay, and to make the door open, basically I'm just going to select all of this, select all of that, blah blah blah. This isn't an animation tutorial, but it'll be quick. Select the door, separate selection, it should still be parented, yep, staying around about over here, doesn't really matter. I'm going to set the origin to, if I just select these faces here, there we go, Shift S goes to selected, and then Control Alt Shift C. That's a cool combo, isn't it? Control Alt Shift C. Origin to 3D cursor. You can also click this little button up here, Origin. It's much quicker, much easier, but the hotkey's cool, so I use it. And then you'll notice if we rotate along the Z-axis, we can do that. And that's all I wanted to show you. But actually, that's not right. Let me just separate these pieces here. These are Control L. Come on, Control L. Separate selection. And I just want to join it there. That's what it's supposed to be. Yep. Okay. So that's all I wanted to show you. Yeah. So in the next part, we'll be doing some cool stuff as well with the Blender's new tracker and some more footage and some mixing of passes from Blender Internal to make all the shadows and reflections on the tabletop. So that'll be pretty fun, I hope. Hopefully it'll be quicker than this tutorial. This was really long. I hope I didn't bore you. Yeah, so thanks again for watching. My name is Greg Zaal, and goodbye.